Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, my dear students, welcome. Our lesson today to continue the domain of the real function. Lesson 4. We have function defined by two rules or more. It's called piecewise function or defined function. Let's see example. If we have function f of x equals x when x is smaller than 0 and x plus 1 when x greater than or equals 0. The best way to find the domain of this function is to draw number line of the two functions, x from x is smaller than 0 and x plus 1 from x greater than or equal 0. We have the number line all, then the domain of this function is R. Next, we have f of x equals 3 when x is smaller than -1 and f of x equals x when x greater than or equal -1. If we draw number line, we have -1 in the middle and the 3 is the function when x is smaller than -1 to the left, and the x when x greater than or equal -1. Then we have the number line all. So the domain of this function is R. Another example. Here we have f of x equals -1 when x is smaller than 0 and f of x equals 1 when x greater than 0. So if we draw the number line, we get the all number line except 0, because 0 has no equal here and here. So the domain of this function is R minus 0. Another example. If f of x equals x plus 2 when x is smaller than -1 and x plus 1 when x greater than 1. Here we have two numbers for x, -1 and 1. Then we draw number line and get -1 on the left and 1 on the right, and draw number line from -1 to infinity, -infinity, and from 1 to infinity. So the domain of this function is R, all R, except this interval. This interval is -1 close to 1 close. So the domain is R minus close the interval -1 and close the interval 1. Or we can write it by -infinity open to -1, union from 1 open to infinity. Another example. If here we have two rules, f of x equal -2 from -1 to 0 and f of x equals 0 from 0 to 3. Okay, let's draw number line and we put -1 and 0 and 3. This is numbers x in between them. Therefore, from -1 to 0, first interval, and 0 to 3, second interval. So if we draw the number line from -1 to 3, so the domain of this function is -1 closed to 3 closed, because 0 is closed here, not here. Okay? Another example. If f of x equals equals x, and x from -1 open to 0 open, and f of x equals negative x when x greater than 0 and smaller than 3. If we draw the number line and put -1 and 0 and 3, we get the domain is from -1 open to 3 open, this all interval except 0, because 0 is not equal here or here. So the domain of this function is from -1 open to 3 open except our minus 0 in 0 set. Another example. If f of x equals 0 from -3 to -1, and 2 from -1 to 1, and 0 from 1 to 3. The domain of this function from -3 to 3. We draw number line from -3 to -1. This is the first function. And from -1 to 1, this is the second function. And from our second rule, and from 1 to 3, this is the third rule. Then the domain of this function is from -3 close to 3 close, as you see. The last thing I told you is trigonometric functions. Trigonometric functions we have studied before at third prep and first secondary is f of x or k of x equals sine x. The domain of this function is R. And if k of x equals cosine x, the domain of this function is R. The last one, if k of x equals tan of x, the domain of this function is R except 2n plus 1 times pi, where n belongs to z. This is the last thing you have to study, and don't forget this. Thank you.